You know, for the longest time, the playbook for any ambitious tech founder was super simple, right? Pack your bags, head to Silicon Valley. But what if? What if that whole playbook is just wrong? Today, we're going to dig into one founder's pretty contrarian journey, a guy who argued the real opportunity is thousands of miles away.
So that's the big question, isn't it? If you're a founder right now, where do you place your bets? Is the American dream still the ultimate prize? Or has the whole center of gravity for innovation completely shifted? We're about to break down one founder's very personal and honestly pretty controversial argument. And that founder's name is Alex Liu. Now, get this. He looked at the guys who started Coinbase, the multi-billion-dollar crypto exchange, and he made this just brutally honest calculation about his own identity and his odds of success in the US. It's a really provocative thing to say, but it gets you right to the heart of why he made the choice he did.
Okay, so let's really dive into this choice. Moving from the US to Taiwan to start a tech company back in 2013, that just flew in the face of all the conventional wisdom. So you have to ask, what was his logic?
Well, his journey started out looking pretty standard, Undergrad, grad school at Stanford, the whole 9 yards. But then, the turning point. It happened in Shanghai. He sits down and reads all 30,000 lines of Bitcoin's original source code. And from that, he has this massive insight. Beijing, the Chinese government, would never let a decentralized financial system like that take off. So, instead of heading back to Silicon Valley, he makes a really strategic pivot to Taiwan and starts his company, MyCoin.
And this whole thing was a very deliberate strategy. You've heard the saying, be a big fish in a small pond, right? That was exactly it. Instead of going to the hyper-competitive, shark-infested waters of Silicon Valley to fight for scraps, he decided to go to a smaller market where he could actually dominate, where his own unique advantages would really let him shine.
And this, right here, just perfectly sums up his whole mindset. It was this really clear-eyed, honest look at his own strengths, his language, his cultural understanding, his roots. He didn't see his Taiwanese heritage as some kind of disadvantage he had to overcome in America. No way. He saw it as a powerful asset, something he could really leverage back in Asia.
Okay, so we've talked about what pulled him to Asia, but what was pushing him away from the US? What's interesting is that Liu's take on Silicon Valley isn't really bitter or angry. It's more, it's kind of sad. It's this nostalgia for a place that he just believes has fundamentally changed.
And you really get the feeling he's torn, because his ties to the US are deep. His wife and daughter are in Berkeley. He actually wants America to succeed, but he says he just can't give the America of today a clean bill of health. It feels to him like the country he once knew is just gone.
And this all leads to what he thinks is the critical question for any founder with an Asian background. He argues that your language, your culture, your whole way of thinking is fundamentally Chinese. You can try to, as he says, throw that out the window and try to be Californian. But man, that's a tough act to keep up. So the real question is, in today's climate, is your identity an asset or a liability in Silicon Valley?
Well, for Alex Liu, the answer to that question is crystal clear. He thinks trying to erase who you are is a losing game, especially when, in his view, all the real action, the real future of tech, is actually happening back in Asia.
And really, that's his core thesis in a nutshell. He says that now, when he goes to Silicon Valley, it just feels like a vacation. The exciting stuff, the real fundamental building, that's all happening back home. He sees the Valley getting more and more focused on just hype, while Asia is where the actual substance is.
This really lays out the contrast he's making. He's like, okay, who is actually giving you a shot at building foundational AI? It's not the closed-off models from OpenAI or Google. He points to projects in Asia like DeepSeek that are all about open source. And then he brings up Elon Musk and Tesla's Optimus robot, the one we've seen in demos for years. Liu's just like, so where is it? For him, that's the perfect example of the difference between window dressing and where the real work happens.
But hold on. This isn't just some simple Asia is great, the West is bad story. Not at all. In fact, Alex Liu saves his absolute sharpest criticism for his own chosen home, Taiwan. He sees all this incredible potential there, but he also sees it being just suffocated by its own self-inflicted problem.
And that brings us to this central puzzle. Taiwan has so much talent, so many resources, so why hasn't it produced more unicorns? Why aren't more world-beating companies coming out of there? Liu's answer is super blunt. It's because mediocrity is allowed to fester, and at its core, it's a political problem.
Okay, so here's how he breaks down the problem. First, politicians depend on our votes. So what do? They use this ideological fog to distract everybody from what's really going on.
That means fundamental nuts and bolts problems, like keeping the lights on, just go completely unsolved. And the result? It fosters this ecosystem of mediocrity, where it's incredibly difficult for great startups to actually succeed.
And he gives his perfect, almost unbelievable example. You've got Jensen Huang, right? The CEO of NVIDIA, a $3 trillion company. He's basically the golden boy of Taiwan. And all he did was make a simple, factual comment about the island's electricity problems, which, is kind of important if you want to build AI data centers. And for just saying that out loud, he got attacked. For Liu, that is the ideological fog in action, plain and simple.
Okay, so if the whole system is flawed, what do you do? What's the way forward? Liu doesn't really offer any easy answers. Instead, he basically turns to the next generation of founders and puts the burden of change squarely on their shoulders.
His message is incredibly direct. He's basically saying, stop waiting around for the government to fix things because it's not going to happen. Look, if you can go to San Francisco and raise $100 million, awesome, go do it. But until then, the most important thing you can possibly do is stay right here in Taiwan and raise the standard yourself.
And he has this really powerful analogy to explain why this is so important. Think about it. A startup can never hire a team that's better than its founder, right? The founder is the ceiling. Well, he argues that a society is the exact same way. It can't rise above the standards set by its leaders. So by building amazing high-standard companies, founders literally become the new leaders who can pull the whole ecosystem up with them.
And so he leaves us with this one final, kind of haunting question. Where are the electrons? And you realize it's both literal, like how in the world are you going to build an AI future without reliable electricity? But it's also a metaphor. It's a challenge to all of us to cut through the noise, to ignore the ideological fog, and to start asking the most fundamental, basic questions. It's a call to solve real problems, because that, he argues, is where the real opportunity always has been and always will be.